Is the laughter because you had a really, really good date? Or you think that I'm just like, woo, or both? Okay. Did anyone actually take themselves on a date? Oh, lovely. And anyone in the Love Shack, if you've taken yourself on a date and you want to share anything about what that was, please put it in the chat, because I'm curious about your date. And if anyone here wants to share anything about that, feel free to, because I think maybe others might enjoy at least knowing that it was a process for you. So, any takers on sharing? No? You went to a birthday party?
For you.
Oh, well, yeah. Was that your date? How was it?
It was great.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I gave you that opportunity to have a party. Okay. Okay. Reverend Carrie.
I took myself on a date out to dinner. I've been homesteading in Hemet, so I went to BJ's in Menifee. Oh, yeah. And oh my goodness, that was so good and it was so much fun. Oh my gosh, I got to watch people. Interesting. So it was a great date.
Fantastic. Yeah. I'm glad that those of you that took yourself on a date did that. Yes, please.
I took myself birthday shopping and bought stuff for myself for a change.
Just 1 second. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, because we don't want anyone to feel excluded.
I took myself birthday shopping and bought stuff for myself for a change, and then I picked up some. I treated myself to just splurge on food for dinner, and I enjoyed myself.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, yes. I'll take one more. Yes. Oh, we're waiting for the mic.
Who needs a microphone? Oh.
It was a different kind of date I took myself on. I didn't actually go anywhere, but I spent extra time giving myself a spa treatment, and I'm waiting back for a response for a massage. So I indulge in extra self-care, an act of love for the self. So thank you for the invite.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Chuck will let Debbie do one last one. Thank you. Otherwise, you're going to gong me off the stage, and
Well, I went to IHOP with a friend of mine, and we had a really nice breakfast, but I don't think I'll ever go back there again, because they had said the senior breakfast special was $6.99. When we got the bill, it was $8.99 a person.
Okay.
So they didn't get their tip.
Well, it all worked out in its own way.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So last week, again, we started with self, our relationship with self. This week, the name or the talk title is You and I Are We. So let's sit with that for a second. You and I are the collective we. And as I celebrate the we, which is intimately one with itself, I want to start with this. That's why I played that song, My God is So Good to Me. There is only God. Crazy concept. There is only God. The way that we relate to ourselves, one another, the world, and with the universal power are all interconnected and inseparable. So, you and I are that collective we. In our teachings, we actually say that we are all interconnected. We are all one. Individual expressions, but we are still all one. So, we can't claim to love God while hating ourselves, right? I mean, you can't be out there hating and say you love God, because if God is all interconnected to all of us, Not the greatest to say that. Also, we can't claim that we live in a just and equitable universe while treating others in an unjust way or in an inequitable way. So think about it. Every time we're doing actions, it's kind of like the golden rule, do unto others as you will have them do unto yourself. And so I've been thinking about this, and if each relationship that we have is ultimately an interconnection to spirit, we think about how we interact with our friends, our family, our community, and then we think about how do we include people we call strangers? Because they're not strangers. They're just folks we haven't met yet. Okay? I really want everyone to think about this because, you know, we said that we love one another, that this is a community that is loving and kind and embracing, and I get that. And so I also mentioned last week that we are now going to take Center for Spiritual Living Beaumont into its next evolution, because that's what we're doing. We're always growing, we're always aspiring, and whenever you have a new sense of leadership, it's a matter of what are we doing collectively? And I told you all we would be doing it collectively. Not just me, but collectively. And so part of that is going to depend on our own willingness, first of all, to be doing it collectively. Part of it is our willingness to see the community bigger than just the building or our virtual love shack. It is bigger than that. And if we want our community to expand, what are we willing to do within ourselves for that to occur? And the first thing that came to my mind was, what if we saw people that we don't know as just a reflection of ourselves? Would it actually make it a little less intimidating to want to connect with them? Would it make it a little bit easier if we were standing in the line at a store to not just stand there waiting our turn, but to actually speak to someone next to us? And many of us do. We already, hey, how are you doing? How's your day? We make a little gesture and interaction. But then there's the times where there's folks that don't look like us. Okay, for instance, the gentleman that shows up with maybe a balding head and a full beard and a lot of tattoos. For some people, that's a little threatening. And instead of acknowledging that person and smiling and saying, how you doing, we tend to stand and fidget. And what if this gentleman, because we don't know him, he's an extended part of our family, but what if we actually just smiled and nodded and gave him permission to smile and nod back? What do you think that might feel like? I'm actually getting what I call God bumps right now, goosebumps, okay? Because we interact with people we're feeling comfortable and familiar with. Or maybe someone nods at us so we feel okay to nod back. But what would it feel like if we took the initiative to nod or greet people? And I was thinking about how those of us that walk dogs, we're out there with a dog, and we nod to everybody. Good morning, good evening. We don't even think about it. We're in our little zone and we don't think about it. Maybe the dog is the prop that gives us the safety. But what would it be like if we were just a little more willing, when we were out in the world, to see a person that may not always be the person we'd go up to and say, hey, how's your day going? And we looked at that person, and even though we felt a little anxious inside, remembered, they're part of my family. They're part of my family. Would that feel any different to you if you were willing to say they're part of my family? Would you be a little more willing to go up to them and say hi? Or to see someone that was perhaps struggling a little and needed some assistance? Like, some of us do this anyway when it feels comfortable, and I keep reiterating it because it's always when we're comfortable. But are we willing, when it's someone that just doesn't create that comfort within us, to just make a little extra outreach? If we're a connected, intertwined community that is always growing out in that ripple effect into the world, if we are the only one that made a positive response to someone in the entire day, what do you think it would feel like? What do you think? I mean, how many times has that happened to you? You were just having a bad day, you were feeling like you were in a funk, and you were out doing something and someone said, "Oh, I love your hair," or "Oh, how are you?" All of a sudden, for some reason, we just I did that with this gentleman over here. I went up to him and said, "Oh my God, I love your shirt." Okay, now, but see, I do that. I look for opportunities with someone that doesn't necessarily look like me to find a way to connect. And it doesn't mean I don't feel awkward, I don't feel weird, embarrassed, unsettled. But I want to remind myself that if I'm going to speak about it, I need to demonstrate it in my life. I need to go up and say, instead of me looking at you saying, we don't have anything in common, you don't look like someone I would want to meet, what if I'm missing an amazing opportunity because I didn't go up and connect? And then have a chat and find, oh, wow, we have so much in common. And I would have never thought, because I allowed appearances to block my good. Check what I said, block my good. Because when I went out there and did that, not only was it maybe serving someone, but it served me. So as I sit with this idea of you and I are we, I ask us as this community to be willing, because there's going to slowly start to be some folks that show up here you haven't seen before. Why? It's just how it works. Newness brings, you prune a flower, more flowers occur. Newness brings newness. Okay. When someone shows up in this community and looks different, like the kind that I said that maybe felt a little scary, I'm trusting that part of you that remembers that this is a loving community will say, oh yeah, that's right. They're not a stranger. I just haven't met them yet. So I'm going to go up and meet them, and then we won't be strangers. And then we'll have a way to have a conversation. And wow, instead of saying we don't have anything in common, maybe I'll say, oh, you're about this. Maybe you can teach me something about that. And then I get to grow and expand. And that other person does too. And that's what you, me, and we means to me. I'm thinking about how many times we need to put ourselves out there and connect. And I'm reminded on the Psalm text, Science of Mind textbook, page 557. Some of you might want to write it down so you can read it. 557 through 558 in the meditations. I'm going to share a little bit about my vibrations attract friends to me. Now, we're aware, many of us, of the law of attraction. The vibrational energy raises up, and we are magnets to one another.
Yes, we are.
Okay? Now, being magnets to one another does not mean that that necessarily is someone that looks or acts or bees anything like me. It means energetically we have come together and connect. So if we're able to do that and not have that part of us that postures and says, oh, I could never connect with you. but actually allowed that frequency to raise up so we came together, it would bridge a lot of gaps in what's going on in the world right now, where people don't feel the desire to go up and interact. It's always a peeve of mine, and because I came from a community that was extraordinarily diverse, at my family I call it the United Nations because I have folks from every culture married in, I look at it and say, gosh, it's such a nice way to celebrate my own growth by connecting with different folks. So I want to read a little something to you. The moment we understand that everyone is an individualized expression of God, it calls us into deeper understanding and practice on how to relate and reach out and express as the one. It calls us to have greater compassion and a more convicted practice, which is what Yeshua instructed his disciples to do, and that is out of Matthew 25, verse 35 through 40. And I'm going to actually take a second and read that. You will find that I am not one to quote much biblical scripture, but every now and again something applies to what's happening today, as it always does, and it's important to hear it. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger to you, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did you see me hungry and you fed me, or thirsty and you gave me something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me. Let that just set in. You did for me. And that reminds me of the parable of the Good Samaritan. Now, some of you know this, some of you never heard it. Some of you, as I share it, will say, oh yeah, I heard that before. But it is about how we had lived long ago, and we got a little off track, and it's time, in order for us to take our community and the extended community into a new place of greater compassion and understanding with each other, to reflect on this. So, one thing you will learn about me is I often ask for indulgence, which is a nice way of saying I'm going to share something with you, and it might be a little lengthy, and it's okay. So take a breath in and let it go. One more breath in and let it go, so that you have now cleared your mind and your ears and your eyes to listen. But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? Jesus looked up the question and said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he fell into the hands of robbers. They stripped him, beat him, went on their way, and left him half dead. Now, by chance, a priest was going down the same road. But when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Do we do that sometimes? I know I do. So too, when Levette came to that spot and saw him, he passed by on the other side as well. But when the Samaritan on a journey came upon him, he looked at him and had compassion. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him into the inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, and gave them to the innkeeper. Take care of him, and at my return I will repay you any additional expense you have incurred. Which of these 3 do you think was the neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The one who showed him mercy, replied the expert in the law. And then Jesus told him, go and do likewise. Go and do likewise. When you see people, regardless of their appearance, remember, they're your brothers and sisters. They're part of your family. And in order for us to say that we are one, we are interconnected, we are a world that works for everyone, then we must find in our heart that that's what that means. Everyone. So I want to speak a little bit about something that was done here a while ago that I'm very partial to. It's called the ministry of prayer. Now that might be old school for some of you. That's okay. I show up old school a lot of times. I saw this in the hallway, and a magnet of my vision went right to the ministry of prayer box. And when many years ago, when I was a brand new person at a center, there was always the ministry of prayer box announced at services. And people were encouraged to put a prayer request in it for something that you needed love and support for, or even something you wanted to celebrate. Now I know that we have practitioners, and I know that many of you know if something's going on for you, you can reach out to Corliss, who kind of oversees putting prayer requests out. But do you do that? No. I've talked to people all the time. Wouldn't even dawn on them to write a request because they are having a procedure and they're frightened. Never dawn on them to ask for support and love going through something. So I'm going to tap that bell often because I'm one of those folks that loves to pray. Okay? Those of you, Virtual Love Shack are not excluded. If you are comfortable putting something in the chat, fantastic. If that does not feel comfortable for you for your privacy, then I want you to be able to either reach out to Corliss, reach out to myself. You can call the office and get my information, and prayer will be held. So just because you are not in this building does not mean you are ever excluded from compassion and care. And yes, it was mentioned that I'm a chaplain. So I look at everyone, and pastoral care is a passion of mine, as people in our community that need love and support. And I never want to know that someone left here because they didn't feel this community was available to them. They didn't feel I was available to them. So I'm going to invite us all to take note. If you don't see somebody showing up here for a while that usually comes regularly, we need to check on them. Are they okay?
Thank you.
Okay? If you're on the virtual world and you see the same folks and now you don't see them, I want to know. I want to reach out and are you okay? I don't want to find out that those that I claim as my family did not feel cared for. So the prayer box, if you feel called to write a slip, the prayer box will always be at the table where Betty Ann is sitting right now, okay? It'll always be there. We practitioners, which include ministers, because we're always practitioners first, will pray over this in confidence for a week. All right? So I just want you to know, I'm talking about you and I are we. This is how we connect the we. Okay? And if you don't want to put a submission in and you want to grab a practitioner, that's fantastic. However you want to do it, I want you to appreciate you are not ever doing something alone unless that's just your choice. And then I invite you to check inside and ask what part of you does not want to receive support. Let us take a moment now to go inward in prayer. Great Spirit, God, source energy, known by many names, and I choose to call it God, is in and through and around me and you. And to remind us that we are the beloved children of God, no matter what we look like and how we dress and show up in the world and how we identify in our gender orientation. We are the beloved children. And as beloved children, we have a common connection to one another, embracing our oneness and embracing our sameness. And as we go inward and remind ourselves as this community that has generous hearts, gracious, compassionate hearts, we extend our arms out to allow you to know that you are embraced, whether it is a virtual hug, a real hug, or some namaste acknowledgement that says, I see you and I want you to see me. And I want us to be a we. I want us to connect.